Plants. Plants are multicellular organisms. They're made of eukaryotic cells, so all the cells inside have nucleuses and are made of organs just like animals, but they are different. So you got your stems, your roots, your leaves, flowers, for example. Leaves are your main focus in a leaf, but of course there are other things going on. Your leaf is made up similar to this, typically, with the top layer being the waxy cuticle, which is 1 on this, and is used to reduce water loss for evaporation, so that the leaf can have as much water as possible. Then beneath that is the upper epidermis, which is transparent to let light into the palisade mesophyll layer, which is underneath, which is 3, which is the palisade mesophyll layer, and it's filled with palisade cells, which have lots of chloroplasts, so it is optimized for photosynthesis. Below that, for 4, is the spongy mesophyll layer, which still has palisade cells for photosynthesis, but a lot less because it's lower down in the leaf, so it doesn't need it, as it's not high up, because obviously the sun's going to be above your leaf, so you want your palisade cells high up to capture as much sunlight as possible. Instead, it has lots of empty space for CO2 and oxygen to diffuse in and out of the cells. Inside your spongy mesophyll layer, you have 5, which is your vascular bundle, which is your phloem and xylem. Number 6 is your lower epidermis, which contains your guard cells and stomata, which are 7 and 8 respectively. 7, the guard cells, open and close the stomata to prevent gas and water loss. 8 is the stomata, and that lets CO2 diffuse into the leaf. In 3, the palisade mesophyll layer, and 4, your spongy mesophyll layer, you have the palisade cells. Those are your typical cells that you look at, and they are specialized cells for photosynthesis, and they've got extra chloroplasts. So on this diagram, you have 1, which is the nucleus, which contains genetic material and controls the activities of the cell. 2 is the mitochondria, which kind of looks like a hot dog, and it releases energy through aerobic respiration. 3 is your cytoplasm. Most of a cell's chemical reactions occur here, and enzymes control the reactions. 4 is the ribosomes, which produce protein through protein synthesis. Those are the little like dots. 5 is the cell membrane, which holds the cell together and controls what enters and leaves the cell. 6 is your plant-exclusive permanent vacuole, which contains cell sap to keep the cell turgid. Turgid just means stiff. 7 are your white circles, which are the chloroplasts, which include a green pigment called chlorophyll to absorb sunlight for photosynthesis, which occurs here in the chloroplast. 8 is your cell wall, which is made of cellulose in plants, not in prokaryotes. In plants, it's made of cellulose, and it supports and strengthens the cell. Then in your lower epidermis, for your guard cells, they look like such. They open and close to let gases in and out of the stomata. The outer wall is a lot thinner than the inner wall. The inner wall is very thick, so it can open and close. When there's a bunch of water in the guard cell, the cell will become turgid or stiff, and that will let gases in. When there's little water in this cell, it will become flaccid or squishy, so it closes to prevent water loss. They're light sensitive, so they close at night to conserve water for photosynthesis, because you can't do photosynthesis at night because there's no light. And they are found in the lower epidermis at the bottom of the leaf, so there's less evaporation, so there's less water loss because it's cooler there. And they are also a specialized plant cell. On your average plant, you'll have a shoot, which is where your flowers come from. They come off shoots. And in a plant, your meristem or stem cells are found at the growing tip of these shoots. They're also found at the bottom of your roots. Your roots will be in the ground, in the soil, and they have little microscopic hairs at the end of them to absorb water and minerals. And you will also find the meristems at the end of those for the stem cells. In the cells video, we went over what stem cells are. At the end of each, you have the root hair cell, which is a specialized plant cell. Each root is covered in millions of these, and they're really small. They're microscopic, in fact, to increase surface area and increase the rate of active transport. They have to use active transport instead of diffusion, and they use osmosis for water. So active transport is for the minerals in the soil, and osmosis is for the water in the ground. They don't have any chloroplasts because they're in the ground, so they can't get any sunlight, can they? Your other specialized cells are from back in the leaf, but they're also in your stems, and they are the phloem and xylem, which are found in the vascular bundle. The vascular bundle is just the pair of them. They are very similar, but they are opposites to each other. The phloem is long columns of living cells with small pores in the end walls between the cells, and that's to let stuff through. Specifically cell sap, usually. They are multi-directional, so they go both ways. So you have your food substances in those because the phloem transports nutrients, and that process is called translocation. Your nutrients are either your minerals from your roots or your glucose from photosynthesis in the leaves, and they go up and down in the phloem, and that's translocation. Then you have the xylem, which are dead cells. They're not living like the phloem, and they don't have end walls. The phloem does have end walls. They are strengthened by lignin on the edge of them, on the cell walls. They are only one way, however, so that transpiration can work. They go from the roots all the way up to the leaves, where they evaporate the water molecules. Transpiration is the water transportation. Translocation is the nutrient transportation. Transpiration is when in the leaf of your little plant, the water evaporates and it goes off into the air, and then there's a lack of water in your leaf. So due to osmosis, the water in the stem is going to go up into the leaf, and the water in the roots are going to go up in the stem because there's been a gap, so it's got to travel along the gap. The rate of transpiration is affected by 4 things. That's light intensity, because when it is dark, we know the stomata will close to conserve water, so the water can't get out if the stomata is closed. If it's warmer, every chemical reaction will happen faster, but also more water will evaporate, which means more water can move up the plant. If there's better airflow, the water that evaporates around the leaf can just fly away, so more water can move up and out because there's not a high concentration of water outside the leaf. And then humidity is similar. If there's not water vapor around your leaf, then more water can come out because there's less of a concentration outside the leaf than inside the leaf. Plants, their main thing, their famous thing that they do that we animals don't do, is photosynthesis, which is your main biology equation, which is carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of light turned into glucose and oxygen. Oxygen is O2, glucose is CHO, C6H12O6. Water is H2O, and carbon dioxide is CO2. Glucose is the main product that plants use from photosynthesis. We use the oxygen for breathing. They use it for respiration as well, but glucose is the main product they are after. because it is used for aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and it makes cellulose for its cell walls, and it makes amino acids, which are used for proteins. They store them as lipids, but they also store them as starch, which is why when you measure photosynthesis, you can either measure the amount of starch, which is the glucose, or the amount of oxygen gas produced. Now you can measure that as a volume of gas produced, or usually in your school experiment you will count bubbles produced in an experiment with pondweed in a test tube, and you'll let photosynthesis occur, and then there'll be bubbles when oxygen is produced. Photosynthesis has 3 limiting factors. You have light intensity. If you have more light, more photosynthesis can occur because you need light for photosynthesis. Eventually though, you'll have enough light, but you won't have enough of something else, which is either CO2 concentration or temperature. CO2 temperature is very similar to light intensity. You just need CO2 for photosynthesis because it is a reactant. And eventually you get more and more until you need something else, which is either light intensity or temperature. Temperature is different to these, however. You need more temperature. It goes up until an optimum. That is where you get the most photosynthesis for the temperature. And then it drops off because it's too hot, so the enzymes denature and photosynthesis can no longer occur. That's a quick overview of everything plants for now. There is already a cells video going over topics like cancer, bacteria fission, prokaryotes, eukaryotes, specialized cells, stem cells, and then there will be more on microscopy, digestion, the heart, and other vital topics. Hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.